Good morning, I'm Ian and this is Lee, and we've been asked to share this morning about short-term missions both here and overseas.
So Ian, have you always had a passion for short-term missions?
It started, if I think about it, at a small church round in Margaret Street, which was the Church of Christ, which then moved to Frederick Street and now to the Door of Hope. And I remember going, and there was a missionary speaker or a missionary film, but the thing that I remember is a camel.
Camel?
Yeah, camel. Go figure. Yeah, all I remember about the camel is that it must have been about missions in the Middle East somewhere, I guess. But I remember the speaker saying that if you're called to missions, you will never be satisfied. Your heart won't be still until you've actually done what you've been called to do. You won't get peace, and maybe that's why I was never really comfortable in the church as a pew sitter. I needed to do something else. So every now and then I remember this camel. Don't remember too much else about the evening. But my first opportunity to go on a short-term mission trip was with Steve Grace, who's a gospel artist, and we'd become friends because we were bringing gospel groups, including Steve, Peter Shirley and those sort of guys, bringing them into schools for a week or so and then doing concerts and inviting the school kids and their parents and that to the church. And the first Steve Grace concert, we had over 1,000 people in the church. So that led to this friendship, and I went with him to the Solomon Islands. We toured for a couple of weeks. We did gospel concerts and preached and made appeals, and we travelled by canoe, a little boat, buses, trucks through the Solomon Islands, through the Isle of Malacca and Guadalcanal, and that was quite an experience. Unfortunately, Lee couldn't go with me. At the last minute we decided it was only 4 of us guys were going. So that was my introduction to short-term mission. And around this time we also started to do Easter and Christmas pageants as an outreach. We had other churches and other people from the community involved in those, and they went for around about 10 to 12 years. And in the midst of that, we also had our first trip to Thailand. The church had just started a partnership with the Bethania Church, and a few of us went over to meet leaders and to get a few details worked out to see how we could help and what they needed. So we went with Steve Nicholson, who was the senior pastor at that time, and with Lee Pennington, and with Dirk and Joy Van Naaman.
Since that first trip, God has taken us to countries such as China, Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Melbourne. We have experienced so many God moments on these trips. Ian, would you like to share a couple?
I'd just like to read a verse before I start from 1 Corinthians chapter 3 verse 7. We can all rejoice in each other's labours, sharing the joy of success, because neither he who plants is anything, nor he who waters, but God who gives the increase. And that's a reminder that everything we do, especially on mission trips, is not dependent on us but on God. So a couple of things I'd like to share. From Thailand, one of the things that really impacted us right on the border of Thailand and Burma, we saw kids in schools with a little trapdoor so that they could escape when raiding parties came over to shoot them. We went to a refugee camp and we were struck by a little school that was built out of sticks and plastic on the top of the hill, and we met the teacher and he introduced himself and his name was Rainbow, and I wasn't sure what he said, and I said, "Did you say rainbow?" "Yes," he said, "God's promise. We want to educate these children so that when they finally do get out of the camp, they will have a future." And that was really something that impacted us and certainly impacted Lee as we went through the barrier from freedom into the camp, which was surrounded by armed guards. There are so many things in each country that you could talk about, but one of the things that really impacted us was when we visited our sponsor girl Roxana in Nicaragua, and we took the family to buy groceries, and on the bus on the way back to their home, Roxana's mum said to Lee, "You don't know what a blessing this is. I had no food in the house to feed my children tonight." So just things like that, to be in the right place at that particular time, to be able to supply food for a family, it was just such a God thing and such a blessing. On our way to Haiti and Nicaragua, we had a side trip to Cuba, and we knew that Cuba was one of the 5 communist countries, so we Googled to see whether we'd be able to share the gospel or witness on the street or what the restrictions were, and we didn't really get any definitive answers. But we'd prayed about it. Lord, lead us to someone that we can share the gospel with. As we walked down the street, there was what appeared to be a deserted building with some shutters slightly open that I looked in. I said to Lee, "Have a look at this. It looks like a sort of an art gallery." Suddenly a young guy opened the door and said, come in. It's a public art gallery. Anyway, we shared briefly with him, and it wasn't long before we found out that he was a Christian and his family were Christians. And we sat and talked and prayed and shared for quite some time. The next morning we were leaving fairly early out of Havana, and we were off on a trip around the island. So we got about 100k out of Havana, and suddenly I realised I'd left a pair of trousers in the wardrobe. I would normally never take things out of the case and hang them on a chair. I certainly would never ever put anything in the wardrobe, even at home. But on this occasion, because it was hot and sweaty, I'd hung my trousers in a wardrobe in this very dark little room that we stayed in. So the tour guide said, "Don't worry, we're going back to Havana at the end of the tour, we can grab them then." We came back to Havana, but we went to a different place and we could have been on the other side of the world. We had no idea where we were. We did a walk around tour, and suddenly the guide said, "If you like, we can just go round and grab your trousers." And it turned out we were only 1 block away from where we'd stayed, and we had no idea about that. Havana is a bit of a rabbit warren. We walked round, we got the trousers, and I looked at the art gallery, all seemed to be shut up. So I said to the lady in the casa, "Where would the people from the art gallery be?" She said, "Oh, they live there. If you knock on the door, they'll be there." So we knocked on the door, and the father came out and he welcomed us like old friends and said, "We've been praying that you would come back so we could pray more. We've got some issues that we want to pray about." So we were able to again spend some time with them, and that was awesome. And it's just one of those things. If I hadn't left my trousers there, we would never have seen them again. That was a God thing. We also had an opportunity out of the blue to go for a couple of weeks to work with the underground church in China, and the way the situation is there, we can't really share much about that. A highlight in China was to be able to go to Hudson Taylor's church in Shengsha. Taylor had a connection with Gateway through Henry Reed's daughter, who had gone a couple of times to work with him there. Finally, we've shared the amazing story of Haiti and our involvement there previously, and today we'd just like to give you a few updates. Close to 200 children and 8 teachers are now in the school. They are being given 1 meal a day, and the team over the last few weeks has been able to supply 100 families in Despozo and Tomazo with rice and cooking oil. So we'd like to thank so much those who have given support over the last 18 months. It's enabled this to happen. And to follow, we've just got a few of the latest photos that we've received and a short thank you video from our man on the ground in Haiti, Dennis Satis.
It's a small organization with a very small budget. There is no way we can do all the good that these people need in these communities, but they do need what we did for them today. And on behalf of them, I want to say thank you to everyone who made this possible. May God bless you all and make you prosper in all you do.
Just like to say thank you for listening, and we'd like to praise God for all the opportunities that He's given us. All glory to Him. And we'd just like to also assure you that no animals were harmed in the making of this video. There was just a little human dignity lost along the way. Thank you.